96.3 FM, The Source.
All right, 5 minutes after 11 o'clock. The only place I've ever seen the Eiffel Tower is at Epcot.
Yeah. Me too.
And yet, even though it's not the real Eiffel Tower, there's something about that tower, or maybe the mystery of Paris, I guess, that just seems romantic, right? Mm-hmm. Doesn't it? I mean, we just went through Valentine's Day, romantic things. This is a great way to end the week too, by the way. This is our last interview for the week.
Oh yeah.
I'd rather talk about real life stories. Politics always gets to me. Dr. Roni Beth Tower has been with us before. She had such a touching story to share with us. The book is called Miracle at Midlife. She's got such credentials, and yet maybe the credentials help her understand herself better. I don't know. She's a clinical psychologist. She's an advocate for bringing comfort and joy to people, which I am too. Who isn't? You want to bring joy and comfort to people. She's a contributor to some of the big ones, Psychology Today, Woman's World, The Huffington Post, etc., and says she's a dancer, a quilter, and on the phone. Good morning, Dr. Roni Beth Tower. Good morning. How are you?
I am fine. Good morning, Larry. Good morning, Robin.
Good morning, Doctor.
And I'm looking out my window, and the snow is covering my backyard.
Oh, my.
Are you where are you again? Tell me where you are.
I'm in Tarrytown, New York.
Tarrytown. And you're getting snow? Wow.
And we have snow. You do not have snow in Ocala.
No, we don't have snow in Ocala. This is part of that big storm, right? How's the wind?
That's what we were expecting. We were expecting wind and rain, a big northeaster, but we weren't expecting it to turn into snow like this.
How far are you from New York City? How far are you from the city?
We're a 35-minute train ride.
Oh, okay.
My gosh.
So I wonder if it's snowing in the city.
I don't know. It was a big surprise. I just turned around and I saw all this white.
So tell us, I know you did this the last time you were on with us, but you had a not so good time. I mean, you had some tragic parts of your life, and then somehow you decided to go to Paris and kind of fill in the blanks there a little bit. And I know you did this once before, but bring it back for the new listeners.
Okay. My book is about 2 years in my life. I'm getting a back echo. Do you have that?
Let me see if I can fix that. Did that change?
Okay.
Did that change it at all?
I think that did. That took it away. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
The book is about 2 years in my life, 1996 to 1998. It's a love story of the courtship between me and a man named David, who changed my life forever. 22 years later, we are still grateful every day. The first 52 years of my life taught me lessons, and they taught me lessons about what my life was supposed to be about, and some of those lessons were painful and they were difficult, but when I was young, I thought I could imagine what I wanted my life to be and then make it become that way. I had pictures in my head of especially what I didn't want, but also what I thought I wanted, what I thought I would make me happy. And one of those pieces was when I was 19. That summer, I was homeless. My parents had divorced when I was 3. My mother had moved to California. My father remarried. My stepmother had 3 kids of her own. She certainly didn't want me. And I had nowhere to go between my junior and senior years in college.
Oh.
I needed 2 extra credits to graduate, and I decided to just save my babysitting money and buy a charter ticket and fly to Paris and study at the Sorbonne that summer. So that summer, that's what I did. And at the end of the summer, 19 years old, in love with this gorgeous, gorgeous city, I stood in the center And I looked up at the Arc de Triomphe. I looked back at the Louvre, and I said, woman, this is the most romantic place on earth. You're not coming back till you can come back with a man you love. And then my life continued, and lots of things happened, and I never had a chance to go back to Paris. In 1996, when it was snowing, that was when it just snowed, and I just shoveled. I was out shoveling early, and I brought in a newspaper, opened it up, and there was a full-page ad from Air France, $279 round trip to Paris. I looked at that, and I said, woman, you need to get on a plane and go back to Paris. I realized that trying to honor a promise I'd made to my 19-year-old self, who had nothing to do with the woman I had become after the life I had lived, was ridiculous. But one of the other things my life had taught me was how to recognize when I needed to do something really impractical, when it was part of my soul's purpose on this life, when it was just part of where I needed to go to become the person I was supposed to become. And I'd learned to recognize that feeling of, I need to do this. It doesn't make sense. It's not practical, but I'm being pointed in a direction, and that direction has something to do with who I'm supposed to be, which for me personally was I had learned to be as loving a human being as I could be. And this had manifested before many times when it had shown me how many different ways we can love, how deeply we can love, how to let go when death separates us from something we love, when we lose something we love, when it simply comes to an end, because everything is impermanent ultimately. And so I bought the ticket, and I needed to sell the jewelry I'd inherited from my mother to pay for it. And to be a little bit practical, I only bought 4 nights in Paris and a new computer, which was very useful for work. And I went to Paris, and that was the trip where I met David, and the rest of my life just changed.
Tell us how you met him.
Okay. 2 days before I was leaving, one of my girlfriends suggested that I call David. And I said, well, who's David? And she said he'd gone to law school with her husband. And I said, oh, okay. And I took his phone number. I had already, and this is more of that synchronicity, the things that happen to us that if we pay attention will be the breadcrumbs on the path we're meant to follow. I promised a girlfriend who'd been visiting from Toronto, she had a cousin in Paris. And back in the 90s, international phone calls were really expensive. We didn't have the internet then.
Right.
And I had promised her that I would call her cousin and send her regards. So I knew I had to buy a phone card. And so I figured, okay, I'm going to learn how to make one phone call on a foreign phone system. I can make a second one. So that's what I did. The first evening, after I'd spent a very, very confusing day getting lost and getting found again, I hadn't been there in 33 years, and it had changed a lot. So I sat down in this phone booth. I called the cousin, and she was kind of burned out on people from the U.S. calling her. But I called her, and then I managed to make that second phone call. Luckily, David was not home, and I managed to leave a message on his answering machine.
And where was he? Was he in Paris?
He was living in Paris. He had been living there for 24 or 25 years at that point. Wow. His entire adult professional life was spent working in Paris, or the bulk of it. He had fallen in love with Paris when he was young, when he was a junior in college, and he managed to get himself back there in 1972 with a wife and 2 kids.
Oh.
And he began this life. Eventually, he and his wife divorced. She moved back to the U.S. with the kids. His two boys came over every summer, and they came over and went skiing with him Christmas vacation. He got to the U.S. and got to see them often, but he had built this really solid professional practice. He was an international business lawyer, and he built a solid practice. What I did not know until I actually met him in person was that in 1982 he had bought a converted Dutch barge that was moored in the river in the center of the city, right by Place de la Concorde, where that 19-year-old had made that silly promise to herself.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So he was living on this houseboat, this barge, which was so romantic and just so charming, and he took impeccable care of it. And he picked me up for dinner. Well, he invited me to dinner when he called me after he called me back the next morning.
Uh-huh.
And because he made me laugh, which I guess was inevitable.
That's always a good thing, yeah.
Yeah, he invited me to dinner, and we were on our way to dinner, and I saw these sparkly lights, and I asked him, "Oh, what's that?" And he pulled off the road and walked me across the road to overlook the river, and we were looking at some lights that were sparkling behind the bateau mouche, the rivers, the tour boats that go up and down the river.
Okay.
Okay.
So he looked. To the left was the Eiffel Tower, to the right was Notre Dame. So he looked towards Notre Dame and he pointed and he said, "I live on one of those." I said, "You what?"
Oh.
He said, "I live on one of those."
Oh, wow.
And that's how I learned that he lived on a boat. I had never known anyone. I didn't even know people lived on boats.
So did you you and he have make arrangements for a date before actually meeting? It was all phone calls?
It was a phone call, and I just asked David if he could recommend some things that I might want to see, because I had left Paris in 1963 and a lot had changed. And he kept reeling off suggestions, and I asked him a question about something, and he said, "Well, that depends on your point of view." And I was trying to banter, so I said, "Well, I do that for a living." And he said, "You're an optometrist?" See? You know it's funny.
So you,
That's great.
so
I love
so as a psychologist, as somebody who understands the human psyche, were you a textbook example of somebody falling in love?
Not yet.
Not yet. It sounds like it from the outside looking in. It sounds like you were giddy.
I was, by the time I was armored, Larry, I was so armored. I was done with romance. I had been married for 16 years and painfully divorced, but it was what we needed to do. I had remarried. My second wonderful husband had died. I had so much loss. I'd had so much pain.
Yeah.
And
can I ask you, maybe it's not psychological, but it's more of a, I don't know, like a spiritual question. You mentioned the crumbs that lead us down life's road, or the synchronicities that lead us down. Is it almost like divine thing? Do you think sometimes we find each other? I don't know if divine is even the right word, but you know what I mean? Like they say there are soulmates. It's almost as if there's somebody we're supposed to be with.
I totally believe that the universe arranges us to meet the people we're supposed to encounter. Now, we encounter people because we need to be in each other's lives. And sometimes that's for a minute, sometimes it's for a day, sometimes it's for a couple of years, sometimes it's for a lifetime. But I do believe I believe this. My life has just shown me this so many times, that we encounter people. We need to be in each other's lives, and sometimes it's to learn painful lessons. Most of the time, I believe it's to help each other along our paths, because we need to learn something from each other, and some of those lessons are painful. I mean,
do you know the book, and I know we've talked before, so forgive me, listeners, if what was just said doesn't help you understand why I come to this conclusion. It's kind of part last time and part this time. But you are, in a way, like a romantic philosopher. Everybody, whether we admit it or not, and men tend to not admit it, but we like romance. And there's a philosophy behind it that I think you articulate. No surprise, when I was at Barnard, I majored in religion, and I was particularly interested. I wasn't interested in theology. I wasn't interested in history. I was interested in what Paul Tillich calls matters of ultimate concern. I've always been interested in the big picture and the big questions, and I believe that the most important things in life are invisible, that sometimes we eventually can get around to measuring them. Like recently we were able to measure gravitational waves. These things are real. It doesn't have to be visible to be real and to be vastly more important than any material reality. And in fact, the primary bond that David and I discovered that very first night, that very first dinner, was that we had both walked away from material successes and fame and fortune that could have been ours, because that wasn't what was going to make us happy. That there were other things that were going to make us happy, especially loving, especially beauty, especially creating. And these are invisibles.
And so David not only rescued you, but you rescued David too, to have that bond.
We didn't even rescue each other. We were in our 50s. We didn't need rescuing from anything. We had rescued ourselves.
Oh, okay.
We had, when you're in middle age, you've probably done a good chunk of your work.
Mm-hmm.
To define who you are, who you need to be, to like the person you've become. We were both really comfortable with ourselves. It was just, Robin, it was just so wonderful to be with him. I loved being with him. And that was the initial magic.
Where is he now?
Well, that gives me chills.
Oh, he's in the other room. Probably listening to this if it's broadcast live.
So he's probably saying, "Do I have to shovel snow right now?"
I think I don't know. It's maybe between. Are they going to come plow? Because at our age, we don't shovel. We try not to shovel anymore. I try not to let him shovel too much anymore. Or. Gee, are we going to manage to make it to lunch with our grandson in the snow?
In the book, before you moved to Paris, you say, I imagined reinventing my work, life, creating a writing, lecture, workshop career, making a difference in a personal way, both on a group level and potentially at a geographical distance, no longer one-on-one. I also wanted to make art, not just my home and life as works of art. I wanted to create something beautiful that emerged from a very deep place, preferably through painting pictures with words. That is exactly what you do.
Yes.
You have just sent chills up my spine, because that's exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I took a bit of a detour. 9/11 happened, and when we moved back to the United States, we were in rural Connecticut, but it was close enough to New York that I knew my skills could be useful, my psychology skills, and I'd kept my license. So I started working again, and I got a job teaching in New York, which is why we eventually moved down closer to the city, because a 2.5-hour commute was too far for newlyweds, which we were by then. So I took a detour back into the world of psychology, which I really love and I appreciate and I adore, but that was my dream, and you just read it back to me, and I'm living it, and I just couldn't be more thrilled. We have deep ties to France, and especially Paris, and we got back for Valentine's Day this year, and I had the joy of doing a workshop at the American Library in Paris, which was wonderful, and a literary salon the day before Valentine's Day.
Oh.
About 40 English-speaking people from all over the world came, and I had designed a PowerPoint. I mean, thank you, teaching, for giving me some skills. And I was so happy to be able to share with these people.
Nice. Do you know, we have done interviews on this radio show for 15 years. And every day we speak to several authors, 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on the day. In the course of 15 years, and that many authors, do you know we've only met maybe 4 or 5 of them in person? You are one of those that I really hope I get to meet in person one day. I just love hearing you talk, and I love your thoughts on life and God and philosophy. I just love listening to you, and I'm wondering, is David the same way? One of the people we met has, by the way, a husband who was just as fascinating. We had lunch with her.
Yes, we did.
Up in New York, and he was just as amazing as she was. So is your husband on the same page?
Yeah, oh, David's amazing. He's very different. We are very different. It took us 2 years to get worked out how to be together because our differences are really, really serious.
Oh, wow.
But we learn to work across them. We learn to respect them, understand them, communicate at least most of the time. Do you and Robin get to New York?
Yeah, now and then, but not to where you are. You said you're 35 minutes. Where are you again?
I'm a 35-minute train ride. I can get on the train and come to New York
Where?
and have lunch with you. I would love that.
Are you on
Tarrytown, she said.
Tarrytown?
I'm in Tarrytown, New York, which is where the Tappan Zee Bridge goes from one side of the Hudson to the other.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, now I sort of kind of know where that is. Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, you're very close. Well, definitely. We'll have to do this. It'll be this year sometime.
I would love to do it. I cannot promise David because he always manages his own calendar, but I would love to meet you.
So do you do the book?
That would be wonderful.
We met one of the authors in Chelsea, the Chelsea neighborhood of New York, and she was doing not a book signing, but like a live, like what we're doing right now, but on a stage,
right,
in a very, 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 very small theater. But it was really cool to listen to her talk. And then afterwards, we introduced ourselves. Oh, you're the radio people, she said.
You're the radio people from Ocala.
I love one of my favorite questions that you pose is, do they just love being together? And I think that says it all to couples.
That's the gift David has given me. And the gift that Paris gives us both is just deep, deep, deep pleasure. It is just wonderful to be with him.
I've never been to Paris, so tell me what would you recommend? What should I go see besides the Eiffel Tower?
You shouldn't necessarily see anything. What you should do is just be there and walk the streets and walk along the river, take the boat ride up and down the river, the Bateau Mouche ride. It's not about any of the individual sites, although I can give you a list, I can give you an itinerary. I even have a manuscript. I have 188 pages of notes on how to visit Paris that I've written up. I give to friends and family. I don't know. Nobody I haven't tried to publish it, but it's my own personal guidebook, and I'll be happy to share. If you plan a trip, I'll be happy to share some of my favorite things to do. But the most important thing is to just allow yourself to be and wander and discover. I would recommend pick out maybe one destination each day, and then just allow yourself to wander from that initial destination. And personally, I probably, if you're there, I don't know how many days you're there, I could give you a list of starting points.
I would love to do that.
I love that.
I got a little hint of French music behind you. Dr. Roni Beth Tower, thank you so much for coming back on. I knew I wanted more of that, and I think I want even more still. Miracle at Midlife is the title of the book. It is a romance, and it is a memoir, so it's a true romance. And we love your story, Roni. Let's see, I found it on Amazon. Do you have a website you want to send us to?
I do. www.miracleatmidlife.com. The first chapter of the book is on that website under book, if you want the flavor of it.
Oh, nice.
Pictures. Look at the pictures. Go to the photo galleries and see the boat.
Oh, I will.
Yeah,
I will do that. I will do that.
There. That's where I'm going to stay.
Roni, thank you so much. I hope that this year we get to meet you.
Thank you, and I hope I get to meet you too, Larry and Robin. Take care.
All right, we will be right back.
Northwest Florida's largest RV show is coming to the Florida Horse Park. It's the Ocala RV Show, March 1st through 4th. A huge selection of RVs with show special pricing and drive them home financing. Daily door price of 2 $100 gas cards each day, no purchase necessary. Thursday through Saturday 9 to 5, Sunday 10 to 4. Buy one, get one free admission Thursday. $2 off military and first responders every day. Adults $5, kids under 16 free. The Ocala RV Show, March 1st through 4th. Wherever you roam, you're always at home.
Get it for less at the DIY Home Center outlet. Get top quality real wood cabinets the same or less than the big box stores are selling the cheap stuff. And that's not all. Drywall screws big box stores are $6.47 a pound. At DIY, only $4.99. Plus, DIY has the largest selection of mobile home parts and accessories anywhere. From carpet to doors, get the DIY supplies you need for less. The DIY Home Center outlet. We are your building material closeout store. 2191 Northwest 10th Street, just 2 miles east of I-75.
Gene Powell Pasture Mowing, 352-629-2440. Our tractor services include bush hog, disking, front-end loader, box blade, and stump grinding. We also have zero-turn mowers for the smaller paddocks, aisleways, fence rows, and lawn care. Fence row spraying is also available for weed control. We are licensed and insured. Gene Powell Pasture Mowing, 352-629-2440, or online at powellgene, Gene, at yahoo.com. Gene Powell Pasture Mowing. Gene is a proud United States veteran.
Life South encourages you to share the love this winter by sharing life through blood donation. The winter season is always a difficult time to collect enough blood to keep local hospitals stocked. So embrace the giving spirit and give the greatest gift of all this year. Give life. Your blood donation could help save as many as 3 patients at your local hospitals. Visit lifesouth.org for more information and locations. Share the love. Share life. Give blood.
Here are today's headlines from The Source WOCA. The battle over